Hello and welcome to the program. The US has lifted sanctions imposed on Turkey over its offensive against Kurdish fighters in northern Syria. President Donald Trump said that this decision came after Russia agreed with Turkey to deploy troops to extend a ceasefire along the Syrian border. So what is happening now on the Syrian-Turkish border? Joining us in the studio to expand on this topic is Jason Smart, a political expert. Thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Smart.
Thank you for the invitation.
So, in your opinion, will the Turkish-Russian agreement hold?
I think it will for the time being. And the reason it'll hold for the time being is it's simply not in anyone's interest, I think, right now to see it change. It's better to let things stabilize a little bit and then to act further.
There's been 8 years of bloody war in Syria, and now we have all these different players. We have Russia, we have Iran, we have the Assad regime, we have Turkey. And they're sort of shaping the situation there, and they're having influence on the political sphere as well. So, what sort of influence will this have? Will their sort of what sort of influence will they have on the outcome that will be the end of the Syrian war?
I think that the outcome of the Syrian war is something that everybody wants at this point, because it seems quite probable that Assad will still be in power. At the end of all this, unfortunately, after so many lives are lost and cities obliterated, Assad will still unfortunately be in power. And they have to realize that given this reality, what is going to be the future of the Middle East, what is going to be the future of the Syrian state, and the fact that they do have constant, internal conflict, whether it's with the terrorist organizations, multiple organizations within the country, the unfortunate situation of the Kurds there, and the border with the Turks. We have to understand that there is multiple state interest here. And the regional hegemons that have the most influence, obviously, are Russia because of their military base there, and so they have a very keen interest in what happens to Syria, but also Turkey, the other regional hegemon that's quite important. And so when we consider what they're looking at and how they view the situation, I think it seems quite improbable that they would want to have more instability. Everybody there would like to have stability because it's not helping anyone. Especially as, the Turks have pointed out multiple times, or Erdogan more specifically, has said, listen, we've got millions now of immigrants, refugees in our country that we don't want to have here. Like, we don't want this debt, this cost, this headache. We'd prefer not to have it. We'd prefer them to go back to Syria. But the only way to have that happen
is... But what are they going back to? I mean, this so-called safe zone.
Right.
But what sort of infrastructure? What's left there?
Well, that's the problem, is Syria is pretty well obliterated at this point. And as you know, I think that the unfortunate thing of the Syrian uprising that's years ago started is that it's going to have this result. There wasn't even a change of government. All this loss for what? What was the gain? I mean, there was obviously this intent, this hope that Assad would leave or be changed, but that didn't happen. And now we're left with a very broken state. And what does that mean? What will happen next? And I don't think there's really strong answers to that, to be frank. I think that it's going to wait and it's going to take time. But the cost to rebuild Syria is going to be incredible. Absolutely incredible, both in toil as well as in dollars. The cost will be amazing.
What was your initial reaction following the Erdogan-Putin talks?
So I think that we have to understand that Turkey has been for a long time now on the track of moving away from its Western allies. And that's not surprising. Whether it was Turkey buying weapons from the Russians or it was, the sort of distance it's had from NATO-related activities, Turkey has been moving this way. And it's been this way since, I guess, 15 years, 20 years. No, maybe 15 years, 12 years, I don't recall correctly. But when they started to realize that it was clear they would never join the EU, I think that was the decisive moment. When they realized that no matter what they do, they will be a NATO member and everything else, but they'll never join the EU, which would have been the goal. And they started to look around and said, if we will never be a member of the club, then we have to join another team. I mean, as there is these confederations, such as the EU or the United States and its trade allies, if we're not going to be one of them, where do we go? And Russia extended its hand. And Turkey has unfortunately been sliding in the direction of Russia for quite a long time now.
What do you think 10 years from now, how will the Turkey-Russia deal be seen?
I think it's hard to say. I think the reality, what people generally will find if they make deals with Russia, is two things. Is that Russia is very transactional. It doesn't usually give the results that you would hope for because Russia needs something and it's giving you something. But Russia also itself has very little to offer. Let's remember that Russia's economy is incredibly small. Russia is a very, very developing country still. It's not, it's not this top country that has a lot of ability to finance other things or to be a strategic partner. You can export, but there's only 138 million Russians at this point, compared to the United States, which has 330 million people. So where would you rather export to? Where's a larger market? What's better for your economy in the long term? And it would say, who gives loans? Russia's not big on, supporting other countries in their development.
So what do you think should be the main concerns for all of Western leaders now that this peace deal or rather ceasefire is in place, and they're working towards peace and the creation of this so-called safe zone and the sort of transportation of migrants and displaced there?
Well, I think the focus should always be about the humanity of this. I mean, these are people's lives who have been destroyed. That's obviously, I think that any serious person would probably say that is the greatest tragedy in this, obviously. But more than that is, this is maybe a generation or generations that will suffer as a result of this. And how is it that we could try to piece this back together? How can they rebuild their lives with this? How do you go back to cities that are rubble? I mean, this is a really bad situation, unfortunately. And at this point, I think that Turkey, to the fact that it's unsurprisingly trying to define its own state interests, and it's using what it perceives to be its national interest in what it's doing, the Syrians must also look at what is their national interest. And their national interest at this point, I think, would be to try to create an international support for it, to show that it is a changed country, but that it's ready to re-enter the international community, no longer be a shark out in the waters, but rather to be a normal functioning state that is ready to be part of the international community again.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
That was Jason Smart, a political expert. Thank you for watching UATV, and stay tuned for more.